And then,
You're
yes,
alive.
we are alive with you together now. Welcome back to Patriotic Art Live, and I'm very happy to be together again with you, Patriot. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thanks. Just a slight technical glitch. Something keeps cropping up.
Hmm. Okay, hold on. That happens. We've
Oh,
actually.
sorry. Bear with me. Slight
Okay.
technical.
Are you still live? Or are
I'm getting
you?
a reverb from
Oh,
somewhere.
okay. Well,
There
I
is some
will.
reverb.
Ooh, adding some reverb. What are we in a rock band now? What's going on?
No,
The rock duo. No.
there is. It's being played double somewhere.
Oh no, no. I mine was on for a second in the background, and I just turned it off.
So
So
this
that
is like in the
echo.
Matrix.
Yeah,
What is
that
going on?
echo. Right.
There is
It,
an
it,
echo from somewhere.
oh well, it's not. I don't believe it should be from my end because I've turned off my laptop. Anyway, let me talk to the audience a bit about what we're doing here. So, Patriarch has been posting polls every week to the community, the weight positive community in the UK and USA, etc., asking what themes would you like us to do live art on. And so
Yeah.
this poll was a variety of famous kings in our past, King Arthur, etc. And Alexander the Great was the one who won the poll, I believe. So that is the theme for today. And my approach
Yes.
to the artwork that I'll be doing is there's whenever you if you even if you'd say Google Alexander the Great, there's one iconic representation of him that appears to be from a fresco, probably, gosh, maybe 2,000-year-old fresco. I don't know, quite old. It's all kind of broken up and has that archaic look to it. The art style itself is even more gothic, I would say, in the sense that it's more flat. It's not the kind of art style that you would see, say, from the Renaissance, where everything is very realistic. And
Okay.
it's him riding his horse into battle, Alexander the Great. He doesn't have a helmet on, which is unique, because a lot of times they'll show these great historic figures in full regalia, and it's kind of more an I don't know, like a kind of an honorary piece, whereas this portrays him more as a warrior in the thrill of battle, if you will. So
Here we are.
I
I think we are back.
are we back? Okay.
Yes.
Do you want to make any announcements then, and we'll move forward?
No, just we're welcome to Patriotic Art Live, and as Donald's already said about the topic is Alexander the Great as voted by the community, and yeah, what's your understanding of Alexander the Great?
Okay. So as I was just saying, my approach to the artwork is to draw the that section of the mosaic with him in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
and then to kind of show more modern areas of conquest,
Okay.
space technology, various things of this nature, to tie in the kind of the bio spirit or the racial soul of our people as being one of exploration and conquest, and greatness in that regard. I'm not like a war hawk kind of person,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's not my angle, but rather to look at it in terms of reinterpret it or reframe it as how are we making conquest into other areas, um, quantum physics, medicine, um, just all sorts of things. There's even areas of the globe that are still unexplored.
True,
So
very
it's
true.
it's it's more of a celebration of our greatness as a people. That's really what I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to do, is to express, or what I will try to do in this piece, is to express the racial soul, the biospirit of our people in this particular light. So that's my approach to
Awesome.
this. I believe we will be. talking about some of historic facts today, so that's a little bit of a history lesson. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So it'd be nice to not just do art, but also just talk in general about the this iconic hero. If ever we do topics like this in the future,
Mm-hmm.
it'll be good to just give some insights into the past and how important they were to our history as a people.
Yeah.
Because everything has a knock-on effect throughout history, and what Alexander the Great actually did was,
For sure. Yes.
you know, was kind of shaped the course of European destiny in many ways
Mm-hmm.
through the culture that kind of it spawned and spread out, and essentially it helped Europeans to thrive as we expanded and
Mm-hmm.
guess colonized, really.
Right.
Um, you
Right.
know, so I'm just going to switch screens so I can get to mine, and I believe
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to. Since you've changed
Well,
your setup slightly,
yeah.
I need to adjust the transform.
So while you're doing that, I'm going to sort of drop a few facts about
Okay, go
Alexander the
for it.
Great here. So, how did Alexander the Great affect the destiny of Europe? This is like you were just saying. This is an important topic. The spread of Hellenism. Okay, so he was the king of he's from Macedonia, but at the time that was part of Greece, and so this is a Hellenistic cultural spread, if you will. And as we know, of course, the Greek ideas are the foundation and the core of a lot of Western civilization, Greco-Roman development through the Roman Empire, etc. So this is an interesting point. Alexander's conquest spread Greek culture, language, and ideas, shaping the Hellenistic age. The foundation of cities. He founded, or rather, he established cities like Alexandria, influenced trade and learning and culture. So it's very interesting because I know more about Genghis Khan and the Mongol Empire and the Mongol
Hmm.
invasions and how that shaped Asia only because of my huge background in Asian studies and living in Asia for 5 years, etc. So
Yeah,
I would say that Alexander the Great is the Genghis Khan of our world of Europe. And,
yeah, I would agree with that.
I think that's a
Um,
really a fair statement. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean it's the Hellenistic culture which he helped to spread
Hmm.
that basically uh, kind of influenced a lot. It even influenced the Romans,
No, of course. Yeah.
um, through the Hellenization
Hmm.
of different cultures, and we populated far even up to India. So
Right, right, right. Which a lot of people are really not aware that, Persia and northern India, etc. These in ancient Mesopotamia, in ancient times, these were Caucasian regions.
mhm,
The different ethnicities, but overall Caucasian. And so when we think of even ancient China has Scythian mummies and the like. So it's you often have to think, and of course I think most of us know about Egypt, and you see these mummies that have red hair and like a Caucasian bone structure, etc. It's a part
mm,
of our history that I feel is intentionally kind of white, or not whitewashed, but right, sort of erased in a sense. We have to see things in a certain context, so that's something to point out, I would say, as well. you know
yeah, yeah.
So here's some
So
interesting news about Greece. This was just a very recent thing I saw on Twitter, that the government has somehow officially recognized the resurgence of indigenous Greek religion, and that there's processes of people kind of reviving their indigenous ways, if you will.
mhm,
I never really like to use the word religion when I talk about things of that nature, and I don't have like a blanket statement about it all, as if like all all indigenous ways are the same. The different sort of folk gods, ancestor worship, or various aspects. There's probably quite a lot of difference there. But I just thought, in light of the times we're living in, and how Western civilization is so profoundly under attack, that is a movement forward towards preserving their own culture. You see what I'm saying? So,
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
mean, I know you're. I mean, it's a tricky one for me. That I
I
know a
know,
lot
I
of
know.
pagans would be
Right, right.
happy. I mean, personally, I still feel that that's a bit of a regression to us. From a faith side of things. In terms of it's a progression towards a sense of identity and wanting
Yeah,
to belong.
yeah.
But I think it's a regression in the sense of faith, obviously. Um,
I see your
yeah.
point. Yeah, we've covered this ground, and I
Yeah.
think it's probably going to be something that comes up again and again on this show, just because it's so central. Like the religion, mythology, indigenous ways,
Uh-huh.
they're so intimately entwined with the arts. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I just realized that I have to share your screen. Since I rebooted, I didn't do that. So let me
No worries.
jump on here. I'm glad I noticed it now. Oh, actually, no. You'll have to reshare your screen. I only have your icon now. I have like
Okay.
a I have a I don't know what it's called. It's like a guest area on StreamYard, and then once you share your screen into my guest area,
I'll
then I
do
can
that now.
I can put it on my screen. So talked a
Okay.
little. Oh, there she is. Okay, and boop.
So yeah, let's just read off some facts about Alexander the Great.
All right.
A few little uh, pieces of information about his life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay, so um, on the theme, how did Alexander the Great affect the destiny of Europe?
Yeah.
So actually, we'll start off with 10 facts about Alexander the Great.
I just went over, I think, two of them. So
Okay,
first two. Yeah.
so which ones did you start with?
The first two: spread of Hellenism
Okay,
and foundation of cities.
so yeah, number three, he was the king of Macedonia. Alexander became a king of Macedonia in
Mm-hmm.
336 BC after
Oh,
the assassination of his father, Philip II.
oh,
He
oh,
was only about 20 years old at the time of his assassination or
oh
his
boy.
ascension to the throne. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we have the conquests and empire. Alexander embarked on an unprecedented military campaign through Asia Minor, Egypt, and the Persian Empire. By the time of his death, his empire stretched from Greece to northwest India, including Egypt and many parts of the Middle East. So yeah, we touched on that at the beginning, didn't we?
I bet.
Yeah, simply epic, like you say. He was the Genghis Khan
Yeah.
of that era,
Yeah.
and what that did was set up the the uh, the the destiny for Europeans, modern Europeans. I think
Hmm.
everything has a knock-on effect, and I
Certainly.
think it all played a part in culture expansion and
Hmm.
colonization. And
Right.
had that not have happened, you could have had a number of different peoples emerge, especially from Arabia, and
That's a good point. Yeah.
and populate Europe before. Well, I think Europe was somewhat sparsely populated, but I think over time it was a lot of the sort of Mediterranean cultures and that, and the sort of the Scythians, which branched out from the more eastern regions into the west, didn't they?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, that's a whole other topic, and it goes back quite far as well. Um, the Scythians. Wow, I mean that's a pretty deep topic. As far
Yeah.
as like how old they are and how far they reached all across, of course, the steppes, Russia. I some like from China to, geez, I don't know, somewhere in Eastern Europe for sure. So there's a comment here by Carlo, my buddy Carlo in Spain, is joined us. Not familiar with Greece, but it sounds like an attempt to weaken the Greek nation, which is a Christian nation. Our enemies promote everything that weakens our nations, including so-called paganism. So this is, like I said, this is going to be an ongoing discussion, I suppose, between these two sides. Paul and I are very, very much about unity and not infighting and these kinds of things. I don't know that there'll ever be an agreement on these topics. So I feel like, people are free to talk about them, of course, but at the same time, within the context of what we're doing, we're trying to bring our folks together, and
Yeah.
celebrate who we are, and that includes all aspects of that spectrum. So, I think from there you go. That we've already had some pretty interesting conversations about Christian faith, Christian. Just sort of the spiritual technology of it, forgiveness, faith, all these interesting things, and it's very enriching to the viewer, I think, the guests of the show, etc., everybody in the community. But I think it's also okay to give equal time to other people. I think that Carlo makes an important point, that we have to be vigilant against anything that is weakening us. Our it maybe begs a broader question of, do we all have to be unified in one religion? Is that, or are we able to, kind of move forward with these different religious orientations, and somehow, it'll be better for us? I can't say that I have the answer for that. Go ahead.
Well, my personal view is that I think the more closely aligned we are in all cultural aspects, I think the better. And I'd never thought about this before, but I think that there shouldn't be a separation of church and state law. To be honest.
Okay.
And I think it was when that happened that there was a massive decline in our religious kind of sects and identity, because at one point we were shrouded in our identity as Christians, and I know there's a lot of pagans that at one point, Europe was very pagan, and there was a switch over, and I think there were certain means of incorporating elements of paganism into or incorporating elements of Christianity into paganism, so people will be more willing to accept it. So there was a bit of a crossover, and that because I think I heard that paganism, there's a lot more of pluralism in paganism, as in they could accept multiple gods and things like that.
Polytheism.
So there wasn't monotheistic,
Yes.
And I think with that they were they didn't ditch all of their gods straight away.
Okay.
But they were kind of open to accepting Christ as a god, as an idol figure, and then it was a kind of a slower process of eventually getting rid of them all and becoming strictly more monotheistic.
Right.
But I personally see that that Europe thrived a lot more and was more united in as nations, distinct nations. I think we achieved a lot more than we did before under Christianity, and I think that's really because we all were under one hood. I mean, I know there was corruption in the Catholic Church and that, but generally speaking, there there was still unity
Yeah.
within, or kind of under the surface of that corruption, at the grassroots of society.
Right.
And I think all that cohesion and workforce added to sort of a powerful shift of,
Hmm.
that really enabled us to do things like build such epic cathedrals and focus on
Hmm.
such great achievements. And
I should say that
um,
religion is an extraordinarily powerful force to bring people together and make them accomplish amazing things. I think that's pretty obvious. So, violence is life is one of my guys in the chat here. He says, yes, people's natural carrying on of family traditions in the paganism that remained when people were made to be Christian or Muslim. So I guess he's kind of commenting on a variety of things here.
mm,
There's a lot. I mean, I suppose that's a massive what's the word I'm looking
topic.
for? Like sidebar or whatever, like. But let's get back a little
Yeah,
bit to Alexander the Great. Let me read off a couple points. Uh,
sure.
so we're talking about the foundation of cities, influence on the Roman Empire, impacted Roman art, architecture, and philosophy, military tactics, and innovation. Alexander's strategies influenced European military thought for centuries. That's phenomenal. I'm
Hmm.
wondering how much, say, Napoleon was influenced by Alexander the Great. I would imagine
Yeah,
there's probably a connection there.
I'm sure they all would have studied them. And what he would do is he would establish what would be called Alexandrias, so
Mm-hmm.
mini cities that were kind of strongholds, which
Mm.
kind of fermented sort of Macedonian Hellenic culture,
Okay.
and he would have put people in key positions of power,
Yeah.
um, and also he really ingratiated the nations that he conquered as well.
And tell
So
me more. Tell me more about that.
so I think he basically didn't treat them as slaves when they were there. They were more or
Yeah.
less
Hmm.
seen as part of the culture.
Citizen.
I mean,
Okay.
I don't think he was about kind of just exterminating people. He
Yeah.
understood
Yeah.
how societies work and function,
Mm.
and he wanted to bring with him sort of wealth and prosperity, and
Mm.
and I think so long as people saw that they could have a good living
Yeah.
under his rule, that they were more willing to kind of be subservient
Mm. Mm.
and assimilate essentially to
That's
the new opposed kind of respecting culture which was emerging out of
So
his.
here's an interesting tie-in, and that's very similar to what Genghis Khan did as well.
Right.
His he allowed a huge amount of pluralism, religious practice, of freedom per se, among his all the people that he conquered, and
Hmm.
essentially it was basically just saying, I just I want to be the absolute ruler. There'll be some kind of a tax, but other than that, you will enjoy the protection and the benefits of our culture, our blah blah blah, military, da da da. And what happened is that when all of these tiny states were unified under that, that's
Hmm.
when the ideas and the sciences and the medicines and philosophies of those peoples started mingling with each other and then
Right.
formed even greater civilizations. So, as sort of, harsh as it is talking about war and conquest of these types of things, it in a sense is civilization building, though. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly.
there's something there. Now what you were just talking about, I feel very much we need to do that now. We need to have our own kind of Alexandria. We need to have, we need to build
Exactly. Yeah.
cities. We need to build new cities that incorporate everything about us, everything to secure us. We have to rebuild ourselves for the future in such a way that shows, you know, acknowledgement of the history that we're living in now, which is white replacement, white genocide. And so,
Yeah.
this is the thing about life is bad things happen, and you're supposed to grow and strengthen as a result of it. So it needs to take place on a civilizational level. We are literally in a civilizational war with Judaism and Islam. So these are ideas that
Yeah,
I
they're
resonate
cultural
with.
wars, aren't they?
Yeah, I resonate very strongly with this. Yeah.
And I've heard interviews in the past where a lot of Jews would claim that Islam is their broom. And I think the nature of Jews over the years that they've always been merchants, traders, and very dominant in commerce, and so
Hmm.
they've always lent, and I think they've always had influence and sway in different nations, and Islam has adopted different cultural tendencies, whereas they will tend to probably live under that influence of Judaism, but they would
Hmm.
breed in numbers,
Hmm.
and really dominate in that way in a totally different respect. So you've kind of got the, where you've got an influencer that would um, utilize the Islamic culture in one way,
Mm.
uh, but at the same time, as it might have a certain amount of control over that culture, it could very easily lose control over that culture through
Oh yeah, sure.
number, lack of numbers, and slowly being
Which is
ground down.
which is why you send the Christians to go fight them.
Yeah, something
I
like
mean,
that.
that's kind of what's happening in currently. Like America has to fight all of Israel's wars, and our young men have to die for Israel, and all of this bull. So that's a whole other topic.
Yeah. Well, I guess there's the whole Ukraine thing as well, isn't there?
There you are. Yeah, yeah. I've heard them talk about Ukraine as the new Israel, or Israel 2.0 or
Mm,
something, that essentially trying to set it up as such. But let me read a few
yeah,
more
go for it.
comments here, or rather points. So, political influence. His empires model influenced later European empires and colonialism. So these are just some kind of factoids about Alexander the Great.
Uh-huh.
Pathway to Eastern influence. Conquest facilitated the exchange of ideas, technology, and goods between the East and West. So that's a big one, I think. I feel like that's a pretty huge topic. Again, with my background in Eastern studies and such, I feel like I would say, it's just a totally different kind of orientation towards science and invention. Um, this isn't the show about India and China. That's not the
No.
topic of the show. But there are, and to some extent, I think that we can steal a little thunder, at least from India, in terms of the fact that the Aryans were the early founding members. But China is quite unique and quite inventive in their own way. And whenever I say China, I'm not talking about the Communist Party. I'm talking about 5,000 years
Yeah.
of, and many, many different ethnic groups, because China today is, imagine if the Roman Empire still existed today, where all of the nations in Europe had one language and they all spoke Latin, but and were under, say, the rule of the Roman government or something. Whereas,
Hmm.
so because that's what China's history is just nonstop civil war. And
Right.
but again, I don't want to like go so far down that road. Um, but anyway, yeah.
As it is today, China have kind of erased a lot of their own history, haven't they? And I mean, that's part of
Well,
the communism.
the communists have tried, and I would say it's more than that. They've erased their own people, meaning, like, if you compare, say, Taiwanese people to people from mainland China, the Taiwanese are more authentically Chinese than
Really?
mainland Chinese are, because communism destroys the soul of a person. It destroys their culture, destroys their history. It
And
changes who they think
even
they are.
genetic makeup then of the people.
Well, I don't know that I would go so far as the genes. Getting DNA is actually very malleable. But what I'm talking about is that when you criminalize your own history, when you destroy all your temples and publicly assassinate college professors and all of this kind of thing, I mean, it's cultural suicide. Um,
Hmm.
so it's a pretty brutal thing to do. And like mainland, and I'm making broad statements here, but there is, I don't know what to say. People who live under communism, they live in fear. That's all I got to say about that. So it's not the true Chinese culture, is what I'm saying. But
Hmm.
a warning for us to make sure that we do not have communism in the West.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, we see the dangers, that's for sure.
no doubt, no doubt. But so one of the sidebars related to this, I have a rocket ship, shooting off to another planet here to kind of
Okay.
think about like the conquest of space.
I see. I'm going for a more just standard portrait, I think,
Okay.
of Alexander the Great. I just fancied
Mhm.
sharpening up my drawing skills,
Okay.
drawing and painting skills. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
just flashing out the base. I'm going to zoom in shortly
Mm-hmm.
and try and just do a bit more, get into some more details.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done the base layer.
Yeah.
I'm going to go over it with more of a browny beige red, and then and then push it. Just a shout out to Repair Shop. Thanks for showing up again, and Mayfair Competitor. How you doing? Always good to have you here. Yeah, let's drop a few more facts.
All
So
right.
we've
Go ahead.
spoken about some of the Alexandrian facts, spread of Hellenism, foundation of cities, influence on the Roman Empire, military tactics, innovation, political
Mm-hmm.
influence, the pathway for Eastern influence,
Mm-hmm.
philosophical and scientific impact.
Yeah.
Um, and which else have we need to read off? There was the founder of cities. Alexander was
Mm-hmm.
founded more than 20 cities that
Mm-hmm.
bore his name, the most famous of which is Alexandria in Egypt. Alexandria became a major center of the Hellenistic civilization, blending Greek, Egyptian, and all other cultural influences. I
Hmm.
wonder if that was when Cleopatra started to kind of take rule, and the Macedonians kind of became a lot more prominent at
Wow.
that point.
It's a
Not
good
too sure.
question. It's a good question. Um, so what other things? Early life. Alexander the Great was born on July 20th, 356 BC, in Pella, the ancient capital of Macedonia. He was the son of King Philip II of Macedon and Queen Olympias of Epirus. Sorry, Aristotle as tutor. Wow, Aristotle was that's
Mm,
interesting. So, one of the most influential philosophers of all time, Aristotle, was Alexander's tutor. Under Aristotle's guidance, Alexander developed a passion for philosophy, science, medicine, and literature. That I did not know. That's actually pretty extraordinary. That right there is pretty extraordinary.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he was more than a military leader. Then it wasn't pure barbarism. It
Right. Right.
was it was strategic genius that he
Mm-hmm.
employed. He understood people. He
Yeah.
understood how to manage them, how to inspire,
Right. Right.
um, and I think all of it wrapped up. You know, he was a military genius as well, obviously, but I think he really he had it all really in terms of what was necessary to kind of lead, and I think that's what made him great.
Yeah,
Um,
I wonder how much Aristotle's ideas inspired his conquest and the idea
mm,
of building civilization. I think that's a pretty interesting question there.
mm,
But yeah, there you go.
yes, I used to do a podcast with Sven Longshanks a while back
Is that
on
right?
patriotic history. Yeah, and yeah, we did. We touched on um, a lot of this stuff. It's hard to remember
Mm,
sometimes, but
hmm.
I do know that he uh, sort of towards the end of his life, he got very um, kind of closely linked with the Babylonians there, and I know he liked his sort of fashion and attire, and I think he kind of softened a bit. He probably mellowed over the years. There was a point in time where he uh, he pushed his soldiers so hard east that they all wanted to go home, and
Yeah.
he gave one of the most epic speeches. If you go on Kings and Generals, as a YouTube station,
Hmm.
um, Kings and Generals is a fantastic history sort of YouTube channel,
Hmm.
and there's a speech that they recall that he gave, and it's a very good performance, very inspiring.
What was the gist of the speech?
It was the gist of his men were abandoning him, and
Okay.
he basically just put them right, put them straight.
Okay.
Basically, took them from um, peasantry farmers that
Hmm.
barely had any cattle to warriors with all the spoils of war, and
Hmm.
and how he's himself has not really had a rest. He says
Hmm.
it's not like he was a leader that would kind of, with a hands-off approach.
Yeah.
He was pretty much there in the front of it. He was talking about his scars that he incurred, with them, and that he hasn't really lived to like a luxurious lifestyle. He's got the
Hmm.
cape and the diadem, and that's about it. And he was just making a point that where he's taken them, where they've come from, but ultimately they were free to go.
Hmm.
Of course, some of them did, some of them carried on, but I think that was towards the end, and he didn't really carry on much towards it. But they could have done. They could have really headed further to the further east, and I think he wanted to conquer more parts of um, India, and
Hmm.
even into where's just beyond that.
Well, past India, you're gonna go. You're starting to. It depends on where you're talking about. You've got Afghanistan and Pakistan in the
Yeah, I
north.
think.
You're basically heading into the Himalayan mountains, though, and
Right.
that might have been the reason why, because the Himalayas are like the largest mountains in the world, and so like trying to
Yeah,
take an army over the Himalayan mountains, you know, who knows, maybe that was the reason, but
could have been,
yeah.
but yeah, I think in the end, there's no hardcore stance on his death, but I know that he kind of spent a lot of time in Babylonia towards the end of his life,
Okay.
and I believe he probably got friendly with some people that didn't have his best interests. I know
I
Babylon was,
I see.
you understand, a lot of the Babylonian religions and stuff, sex cults, and
uh,
I think it's enough to, when you degenerate the mind and body, it's.
sure.
Uh, I think, yeah, I think that was he let his guard down, and then
Mm.
after years of war, probably.
Would you know how old he was when he died?
I don't. I'm sure those facts that we gathered would,
Mm.
but he was only young.
Hmm.
He may not have been out of his 30s. Don't know
Yeah,
if
I mean,
anyone.
it doesn't seem like people lived very long back then, too. Like I don't know what the life expectancy was in those days, right? Like probably if you were 40, you were old.
Yeah.
I would say. Um,
Well, I'm definitely middle aged now, by today's standards. So,
yeah.
yeah.
And how many countries have you conquered? It's
I
actually a
feel.
funny meme. There's a meme out there about like how like Alexander the Great conquered Eurasia by the time he was X. What have you done?
Mhm.
Like stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just comparing how different things are. But so
Yes. How's yours going? I see. I've seen that image that you're copying from.
yeah, that this one right here. Like if anybody just Googles Alexander the Great, that's pretty much the first thing that'll pop up. It's pretty common. Let me run over a couple more facts here. Let's see. Let's see. Battle of Issus. In 333 BC, Alexander achieved a significant victory against the Persian king Darius III at the Battle of Issus. Issus. That's how that's spelled. Despite being outnumbered, Alexander's tactical genius led to a decisive victory. That's a big deal. That's a big deal.
Mhm.
Um, seven phalanx, so phalanx and companion cavalry. Alexander made innovative use of the Macedonian phalanx,
Wow.
a military formation, and his companion cavalry, an elite cavalry unit, which played crucial roles in his battlefield success. That would be interesting to get into that more deeply and find out, what that was exactly, how that worked, etc. I happen to know about how like the Mongols worked, what their strategies were.
Yeah.
They were master horsemen, and they could one thing that they basically developed was the ability to shoot backwards while they're running away on a horse. And
Yeah.
another part of their so-called military technology is the invention of silk garments. And so the deal with
Wow.
silk is that if an arrow shot into you, somehow the silk would go into you as well. And so when you wanted to pull an arrow out, you would pull the silk open, and it would help to push the arrow out and cause much less damage. So you had
Okay.
soldiers that could heal quickly and come back into battle. So that was like a gigantic for its time. That was like a big technology. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's a typical trait of the Scythians, isn't it? The horseback riding and riding backwards and being
Yeah.
archers and
Big
masters
thing.
of the bow.
For sure, for sure. So what they would do is they would send in a small group of riders into a military encampment, and then just start, shooting arrows and fighting them. And
Hmm.
that military encampment would send all of their guys out to chase the Mongols, who are, master horsemen, and they're, speeding out of there and they're shooting backwards. But what it was basically a ruse to bring them into a much larger military setup, which is sort of more of like a U shape,
Hmm.
So the opposing army would come into the U shape, chasing the smaller band, and then the Mongols would just surround them, and that was it. So
Right.
they used that strategy over and over and over and over and over.
Until someone eventually clocked on, maybe. But yeah,
Yeah.
why? It's working. But yeah, I mean, what would happen if Alexander didn't conquer as much territory as he did and expand the sort of Hellenic influence?
Right. That's
Um,
an important question. I think we.
the
Listen.
there's a lot of I think there's arguments that say Alexander the Great was actually sort of prophesied in the Bible.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Well,
as because the Persian empires, Babylonian empires were a very prominent, featured very prominently in the Bible, especially the Old Testament,
okay.
and they were responsible for killing off the original Israelites. Not killing them off, but sending them into sort of captivity, and and it's some argue that Alexander the Great was the hand of God's kind of punishment or promised fate to those Babylonian empires. They had it coming to them.
Had it coming to them. Well, that's a very compassionate God, right there.
Well, yeah,
I'm
it
looking
sounds
up.
like that.
Yeah.
But it's that. I mean, if there's an element of justice, right, then everyone everyone needs to be humbled, and I think when I say had it coming to them, this is the doing of themselves. It's like it's like in the West here now. We had it coming to us, and it's both the judgment of God on us as a people, but also it's the work of our own. It's the work of our own actions, the fruit of our actions, the seeds that we've sown. We've allowed other peoples to get in positions of power within our lands. We've abandoned our morals and ethics and our faith, and this is what happens. So, and it's hard to say. Oh, it's how do you contrast free will with predestination, and it's really hard to get your head around, isn't it? But I think it's both simultaneously a judgment on us, but it's a necessary thing that we're going through in order to preserve us, I think.
This is a really profound topic that you're talking about, and I have like a variety of reactions to it. I mean, I could we could go deep on this topic. So I guess a part of it is I can't disagree with you to a certain extent that somehow we let this happen to us somehow, but simultaneously I feel like we were tricked, we were fooled,
Oh yeah, we
and
were as
over
well. Yeah, I
very
agree.
very 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 long period of time we were infiltrated. This is on and on. We could I
No,
don't.
I agree. I agree with that as well. But it's the accuser, isn't it? It's it's the classic case of the accuser in scripture. Satan is essentially adversary. The adversary is that person that you know gives us the apple, that dangles the carrot and
I see. Yeah.
floods the swamp. And like Kodriani says, if you've ever listened to some of his stuff, the people deserve the swamp that they allowed to kind of take root, and the swamp has been flooded,
Mm.
and we let it. It's on our watch, and yes, we were tricked and kind of coerced and
Hmm.
enticed, and with technology, like we said before, has been used against us
Mm.
to pump out a lot of this sort of programming and
Hmm.
trickery.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we took our eyes off God. So that's what happens when you take your eyes off God. Is even in our own personal lives, as a nation, we've done it, and this is where how far we've fallen. And if you do it in your marriage, for example, you take your eyes off God, you start looking at certain materials and that. And there's a scripture which talks about in the Bible, which is quite profound, and it's desire gives birth to sin, and then sin gives birth to death. So, and it starts with the thought. So, if you harbor certain thoughts, that will perpetuate the desire, and that desire grows, and then eventually it acts out and it manifests, and that then the thing that is fruitful in your life that it might have direct effect on, such as relationships, will begin to die. And so, if we are a dying kind of culture and nation, it is because of our own actions. I think we have to take responsibility for it.
I definitely hear your point. I definitely hear your point, and I don't disagree that lack of moral standards and connection to God is absolutely the downfall. I guess my feeling is what resonates with me, at least in what you're saying, is this concept of how this has to happen in order for us to grow. And you would, it's hard, it's a hard pill to swallow. I don't know that it quote has to
I
happen.
mean,
well, let me
no,
finish my point.
no.
Let me just finish my point.
Okay, yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is that in nature, hardship makes you stronger, and it's it's just a thing, and so there's if we can take the point of view that this is a struggle that in a sense is an opportunity for glory, and that we can become glorious through the struggle. That is very, very Western. That's very white, And like I would say, this could be a really good approach to looking at it, because we're very, very demoralized. There's a lot of infighting. I feel strongly that we've got to get past that type of black pill mentality, and think more in terms of like, this is actually I don't know, like take a berserker approach to it, like that kind of like bloodthirst for the battlefield of like saving our people and saving our civilization and the glory that comes from it. And that's a very, very based, approach to this, rather than the woe is me, that we've been fooled, we've been tricked, and we lost our connection with God. And those are obviously issues to consider. But I feel like we should remoralize ourselves. We should listen to this. We should learn from it, and don't make
Yeah, I
these
agree.
mistakes again. Yeah, don't make these mistakes again. And part of doing that is, essentially the things that we're talking about, looking at like, what did Alexander the Great do? Setting up
Yeah.
civilizations as he did, et cetera, et cetera. So there's something to learn from the theme of that,
No, I definitely agree. But what I'm saying is, when I say these things have to happen, it's almost like a dynamic that, what comes up must come down. And, just as there's seasons in the cycle of, winter,
Okay.
or spring, autumn, it's there's cycles of kind of there's cycles of falling from grace, and then reclaiming that, and it's kind of like a sifting process. So we're kind of being refined, and we go through these over. I think we've been going through this process for a number of different times throughout history, with different pockets of different cultures of our people.
It's never been so intense as it is now, though, I would say,
No.
Quite
Well,
intense.
we are. I mean, we're on the cusp of. It's like I would say it's like a fall of Rome, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you not think?
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
So
I mean,
we've not had many of these epic falls of civilization that and especially now, where with the height of technology that's we're probably in, the level of sheer control, I think we are definitely in a battle which is probably harder.
Yeah.
We've probably never been so demoralized throughout our history as a people, simply
Yeah.
because of the level of control that.
It's it's very hard to compare what we're going through to what people in Rome went through. I think that it was quite horrible, the fall of Rome, but ours is extraordinarily horrible, and maybe it's unprecedented in history if you consider the mass killings just from the vaccine alone.
Yeah, true.
And then, like, pardon me, the whole demoralization of the LGBT agenda,
Uh-huh.
the darkness of, like, the state taking over people's children, and it's just darker and darker than I think anything humanity has known, because of all the technology that we have. But
Mhm.
also our enemies have had a very long time to work on this, and to develop their strategies, etc. um
Yeah,
I feel, I mean, I'm not, again, I'm not the black pill guy, but you know it's going to take everything we got to get out of this. It's going to take everything we got. And I do feel that there are changes happening. There's I feel hopeful. It's weird because it's like we're in a time where everything's getting better and worse simultaneously. There's these
yeah.
two. It's
It
insane.
comes
Yeah,
in waveforms, doesn't it?
you're right,
But
right, right.
I think the next generation of uh, of youth is going to be a lot harsher
Oh God,
than
yeah,
than
hugely.
we are now. I think
I can
we
already
right
tell
now
you.
we are by comparison so soft.
Hmm, hmm.
I mean, we've not even tasted war in our lifetime like some other peoples have.
Right,
Obviously,
right,
some of the
right,
Eastern Europeans have had a harsher life than us in the West growing up. But our
right.
generation now in the West are very soft, I think.
Yeah, I dread to think of what could happen and what I believe is coming, but there's that might change. There might be something on the grand scale of a world war that has never, could never have been
Have you
conceived.
um have you ever read up about Albert Pike?
Albert Pike, the head of the Freemasons. Am I correct?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, his
Yeah,
outline for three world wars, and
yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure how true it is, but it definitely seems like World War Three is shaping up as he projected. You know,
I mean, the things, it's at this point, it's so obvious that they're all in control of it all, that they literally make it happen. That's like, oh, I mean, they're fucking telling us on the mainstream news to prepare for war. It's
yeah,
fucked up. It's like
and
and
yeah,
everybody knows it's fake. Everybody's like, bullshit, bullshit. There was just, you are making the fucking war, not us. We don't want war. It's all horseshit. So
yeah. I
we'll see
mean, we
how.
live in the age of information, don't we? So in some ways, it's like we know it's we know that there's so many lies, but we're still
Mhm.
powerless to do much about it. And is it? We're not powerless. Obviously,
Yeah,
we are
yeah,
subdued mentally, um, and I think it's gonna be it's gonna take some more doing to kind of
yeah.
get together and actually try and make change.
I agree. So, I one of the there's this is like a spectrum. So you have you know people who have been planning and preparing for this for many, many years, and then you have kind of, people that are super outraged. Like right now at the Texas border, there are
Hmm.
convoys of people coming down, that people are talking about a shooting war. They're literally, I mean,
Really?
it's Texas
Wow.
style. Get the guns. We're going for it. You know, like it's on. Like
Wow.
they're ready to fucking die now. Like they're ready to do it, and it's there. So you know this exists, and then you kind of have maybe a slightly softer version of that where you just sort of have like the information warriors, who are trying to work on getting the message out and blah blah blah.
Hmm.
People who are involved in politics that are trying to like use that angle of the fight. And so there's just so many dimensions. And then of course the people that are the majority, well, I don't know if there's a majority of people, but it seems like the majority of people are just in denial, or they are literally ignorant and are just kind of like stuck in the matrix of like watching sports ball and working nine to
Yeah.
five
Well,
and
that's yeah,
yeah.
that's what I was going to say. It's the dependency on creature comforts, isn't it? It's like the dog still wants to just chew down on that bone. It doesn't mind doing its sort of
Mm,
9 to 5, so long as it can go home and have
yeah.
its few little toys and moments. And
Right. One of the most disturbing things about the Republicans and conservatives in America is I just saw an interview with Jared Taylor talking about this, how he went to a Trump rally some time ago, and he interviewed people like, what is it about Trump that you like, blah, blah, blah. And he brought up race. He's Jared Taylor. And
Mhm.
the thing that they cared about the most was essentially the economy. And I'm like,
Really?
what? Like, I mean, I get it in terms of like, we want to not have to pay so much taxes and we want prices to go down. And like, that's fine. That's fine. But just the fact that they've gotten to that point where that matters more than race means the enemy has won in my view. You see what I'm saying? And it's not until we have 10 million violent immigrants, or rather illegals, coming forced into our country,
Mm.
and how they're just like fucking everything up badly, then people are going to go, oh yeah, race first. Oh, okay, now I get it. And like the whole the I'll give you an example. This guy named Ted Nugent is a rock star in America. You probably know who he is. And during the Trump time, he kind of came out as like a big gun spokesman, and just, that same old kind of Texas flair, that whole thing, and big Trump supporter. And Republicans, conservatives, Trumpers, they were super happy about, here's this big rock star guy who's making all these funny comments, and like this became a bit of a hero, like an icon
Hmm.
of that movement. Well, just a day or two ago, I saw news clippings saying, "Oh, Ted Nugent is in trouble again for saying that the Jews control the banking." And I'm like, "What? What?" I mean, if he is saying that, that makes it okay for everyone else to say it. Do you get my point?
Is
So,
he that well respected then, or is
well,
that
I mean, I don't expect you to know like American
who is
rock
he?
and roll history or whatever, like, but back in like the 70s, like he was a super badass rock star, and
Right.
just a wild, really, really wild rock star guy. And
Okay.
then throughout time or whatever, he sort of just became very much affiliated with like the gun issues. Big avid hunter. He has like his property in Texas is like forget what a sanctuary for buffalo, to preserve the buffaloes. All this stuff. It's very Americana. But for like a guy like that to say that about the Jews, it just shows how the Overton window is moving. So that's my point.
Yeah,
Um,
I think. I mean, there's definite a rise of these talking points, and are looking for solutions, looking for um, asking why these things have happened, and a lot of people draw the same conclusions. So
wow. I
what do you
just
do?
my buddy, my channel is making a couple comments in the chat. He was talking about Americans did not want to go to World War I or II, but they didn't have the media to understand what's going on. Now we do. We will not fight these wars. So all they have is like, LGBT people going, and so they're just gonna go right into the meat grinder. And then he just mentioned, did you see that Toby Keith died of turbo cancer? So Toby Keith's a huge country music star. I'm not into country music, but like for him to have just died from that, and that it's like
Wow.
vaccine related. That's the kind of thing about this is like, you know, people have been dying like crazy, and
I know.
we know it's the vaccine. And everyone who was like saying that they should put us in camps because we're not vaccinated, or lose our jobs, have our children taken away because we're not vaccinated. Those
That's
people are
crazy, isn't it?
they're awfully quiet now. Like, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm sure they can see. I'm sure they can see, but they can't admit it because as part of being a liberal is being arrogant. You know.
Well, I think what it is people when they buy into the lie,
Hmm.
um, and they were duped. They, for one, don't want to buy. They don't want to acknowledge that they were duped.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
big
and
part of
when
it.
you're part of the lie, you tend to want to perpetuate it as well. So,
Yeah, to enforce it,
I think it's
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but glad to say that I didn't take any jabs. That's for sure.
Yeah, I did my research. I mean, literally anything the government tells you to do, you better you
I
better research
remember
it. Yeah.
I remember I was kind of fooled for maybe a couple of weeks at
Yeah.
that. And it was when I was, it was before I even came over, and I was watching videos of China and people kind of dropping in the streets.
Yeah,
And
it's awful. It's a terrible
I was
situation.
like, wow, that if
It's
that
horrible.
comes over here,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and these highlights aren't working at all.
Yeah, that it was so dystopian over there. It was horrible. People were being like they were soldering metal bars around their doors to lock them into their apartments to stop them from spreading COVID, and
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of it didn't even seem real. Like
yeah.
it didn't take long before I was thinking, well, where's all of what was said
Mhm.
taking place. I'm not seeing any of this happening in the streets, or
Yeah.
I'm not seeing people dropping dead. I'm not seeing people just keel over.
Mm.
And it's the case that if there was no media, you wouldn't think anything of it. So I think when you're just able to kind of rationalize it for yourself,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
It points out the power of the media in all of this, like how absolutely essential it is that people watch the media, buy into the media, et cetera, et cetera. Like all of it. And I mean, I just had this discussion last night with some friends. Like, why don't our overlords just simply say, look, no more drama, no more theater. We rule the world, and you got to do these things, or otherwise we'll just like kill you or imprison you or do some shit. Like, why is it not just an open
Well,
dictatorship?
I don't think they have full control yet. I think they strive for it through tech and everything like that,
Hmm.
but I don't think they have it yet. No,
Well,
in some ways they're trying to act fast now because they know, that things are changing. People are talking. People are waking up,
sure.
and when that happens, you have to act faster, don't you?
So the thing with the jab is that it requires compliance. You're supposed to comply with it.
Hmm.
And there's people who, you know, comment on this culture, this problem, all of this stuff. And they talk about how the elite, if you want to call them that, they manufacture consent, how they if you agree to their power structures and
Hmm.
then and you don't rebel against it, then they are beyond karma. If I say I'm going to come to your
Yeah.
house and steal your car at 2:30 today, and you don't stop me, then that's on you. You know what I mean? But they do it in such a way where they lie, where everything is a lie. And then not only that, they've socially engineered people to the point where they reinforce and they enforce the lie among each other. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
For sure.
it's quite a crisis. Anyway, I'm really pleased with how this is shaping up. All this pencil work is just like foundational.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's looking good. I think you've gone for a more symbolic route.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I think yours is beautiful. You have a really beautiful portrait coming together there. And if there's anyone in the chat who would like to comment or question or get involved in what we're talking about, that's great. I'm going to get back to a couple points about
Awesome.
Alexander the Great
Hmm.
in just a second here. Um, hold on. Let me get out of that. So what do we know? What do we know? Cultural fusion. Alexander's conquest resulted in the spread of Greek culture and language through his empire, leading to the Hellenistic age itself, which featured a blend of Eastern and Western cultural elements. Well, now, bing, that's quite powerful. I'm ashamed to say that I need to learn more about Hellenism in general. I know, bits and pieces and parts and pieces and whatever. Like I'm not an expert in the topic, but I one thing I'm particularly interested in is the bridge between Eastern and Western thought. Things like
Yeah.
Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism is essentially half Greco-Roman and half Eastern philosophy. It's quite fascinating, and it's disappeared in
Didn't it
history.
take root in Assyria?
I believe I associate it more with Persia. I believe it's more
Yeah.
of a
Persia. Okay. I thought the Assyrians kind of had that.
how and where and when it spread to different regions. I can't say for sure.
Okay.
There are in small groups of Zoroastrians still in India, so
Right.
they still practice it. I used to be in touch with Jason Reza Georgiani years ago. We talked a lot more, just not online or whatever. Like I didn't have him on my show or whatever, but we would have kind of correspondences about Zarathustra, Zoroastrianism. He's
Hmm.
half Persian, half Irish. That's
Okay.
an interesting combo, and like
Yeah.
he's like a super genius as far as like he's this off the charts brainiac guy, like super smart. And anyway, so he was interested. I had the American Zarathustra brand, and I think that kind of made his eyes widen, and like, oh, are you interested in this? Da, da, da. And so, boom, we were off and running in these fantastic conversations. So I would suspect that the spread of Greek ideas probably had some impact on Zoroastrianism. You know,
Perhaps.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. So a few other things here: death and legacy. Alexander died in Babylon in 323
Yes.
BC. Did you read that already? At the age of
Uh,
32. I think you did.
I
Uh,
knew that before from when
oh,
I
you
did the
just.
show with
Oh, all right.
Sven.
All right.
Um,
So he was 32 years old. The cause of his death remains a subject of speculation and debate among historians, with theories including malaria, typhoid fever, alcohol poisoning, or assassination. Um, what are your thoughts on that?
well, I know the. Uh, well, I don't know anything, but
Yeah, yeah.
to be honest,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
I
Right.
don't
Right.
know. But I suspect that he was kind of poisoned, and from what I learned of his life towards the end, he probably let his guard down, and he was he was in and around. He was just enjoying the spoils of his success, I think, and I think he let
Mhm.
his guard down, and some people probably Uh, he probably made a lot of enemies along the way. So
Oh God, I'm quite sure of it. I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised if he was poisoned.
yeah, I think it's a pretty common. I think that's a fair thing to assume in some
Because
ways.
he would have still had a lot of influence and sway while he was alive, and so I think
Yeah,
I think there would have been people, especially in Babylon. We know what roots were in Babylon, so I really wouldn't be surprised if if he was poisoned from some Babylonian kind of
some
cultish.
Babylonian.
Yeah.
Okay. Division of empire. Let's see. After his death, Alexander's vast empire did not long survive as a unified state. It was divided among his generals, leading to the formation of several Hellenistic kingdoms, such as the Seleucid Empire, the Ptolemaic Kingdom in Egypt, and the Antigonid dynasty of Macedon. So, I mean, over such gigantic land mass, how could you unify all that with, that's, I know it's been done and, whatever, but it just seems that all things that come together fall apart in time or something,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
there
definitely.
has to be some sort of unifying trait that would make all of that work.
Yeah, and I think one of the points I touched on before when I went over this with Sven a couple of years ago was that when you expand so fast, although you can get down settlements and things, there's not the roots don't stay so strong. They don't grow too deep. So
Hmm.
I think the faster you expand, the easier it is for the roots to be uprooted. That makes sense.
No doubt. That's interesting, and it seems like he really accomplished a lot in a fairly short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Oops. But yeah, like I said, with the theme in my work here is I'm interested in the spirit of Alexander the Great, and how
Mm-hmm.
that can influence and shape our movement. What is it that we need to conquer? Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
What do we need to conquer?
yeah. I think
Um,
ourselves, ultimately, like
yeah,
that's my
definitely.
first answer is ourselves. Um, that I think has been the hardest part of this movement is getting other whites to see what the hell's going on. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Um, yeah, yeah. And then even within the movement itself, there's so much infighting. So that's another topic.
Yeah. Did you hear about there's Homeland? Um, the there's a political party.
Okay,
It
tell me,
was
tell me about it.
a, a political party formed in the UK
Mhm.
called Homeland, which was
Oh,
initially they were initially part of a lot of the people were initially part of the PA,
great.
and they've kind of gone off and they managed to get listed as a political party. And I thought it was interesting because I know Mark and the rest of the team at PA have tried so hard
Yeah.
and got kind of rejected at every turn.
Mm.
So I just wondered how that's going to fare um, moving forwards. Is it
Have
going to
you?
cause a future rift with
Mhm.
kind of with choices between the PA or and I don't know. I'm just kind of a bit
So it's a.
concerned that it might be something like that, but it shouldn't be. But you know,
I can only kind of pontificate on that in terms of like the things that I am aware of. So, for example, in America, we have the National Justice Party. And
hmm
when I first heard about it, I was so excited and so happy. And then I learned that they're not legally a political party. And I was
Okay.
like, what? Like, how can you say you are? And then that right straight away disappointed me so much that I was like, okay, well, maybe we'll just see how it goes, da da da. And then that just recently disbanded. There was all kinds of stuff.
Really?
I don't really I can't really speak on it, and nor is it something I really want to speak on. Um, it's a big question right now in terms of like, where will people migrate to from that?
Mm.
I was invited a bunch of times to go to their meetings and things. I just never made it. It just wasn't convenient for me to be able to go. But anyway, now what I've discovered is there is a legitimate legal party for white people representing white demographics, called the
Okay.
American Freedom Party. It's amfreeparty.org. I strongly urge everyone watching this show to look it up. And they are I'll say this: the members of the board are people from American Renaissance, Jared Taylor's organization.
I like him. I think he's
Yeah, so
very articulate and
hugely. So, um, uh, forgetting Kevin McDonald is on the board. He's very well known guy in our movement, etc. So it's legit, and it's based on people who are older, more mature, have been in this movement for decades, and have more of an academic background rather than like a podcast shitlord background. You know what I'm saying here? So
hmm,
like, not whatever, that's its own culture and that's fun or whatever. But it's not going to appeal to John and Mary suburb, like white suburb. They're not going to jive with like the N word and all of the other kind of stuff that they do. So it's but then at the same time, like you were pointing out, the generations are turning. You know what I'm saying? Like what mom and pop or grandpa and grandma would have voted for, the grandkids are not going to be voting for. You know what I'm saying?
hmm,
Um,
yeah.
so my hope is always for unity and for cooperation among all of these factions. I think we're fools if we don't do that. That we have to set aside our egos to, where we can, and work together. As you know, I'm like a massive supporter of Mark Collette and everything that Mark
Hmm.
does. Patriotic Alternative. He's an absolute hero in my mind. So
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
I wish we
Yeah, of
had a Mark
course.
Collette. I wish we had a Mark Collette in America. I mean,
Hmm.
we got some great guys. I would say like Warren Balow is one of my top.
I met
Like,
him.
oh, that's awesome.
He came and spoke.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nice guy. Very knowledgeable as well
That's
about
the thing.
history and
He's solid. Like he's mature. He presents himself well. He's intelligent. He knows how to talk. He has courage. He has all of those traits that make for a good leader, not
mhm.
somebody who is just like taking the piss out of somebody on a podcast all day, and you know just that sort of like locker room jive BS that is really
Yeah,
for
yeah.
teenagers. Like that's we need to get past that. It is a
Hmm.
big part of the culture of the far right, the alt right, or whatever. But if we're gonna go mainstream, we have to get past all that stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's interesting. We always have interesting conversations on this show.
always,
Even
always.
even though like the theme is Alexander the Great, it somehow spins off into some and
Yeah.
and not always easy conversations either. Like the whole
No,
Christian pagan thing and all that business.
yeah,
That can be difficult. Whenever
not
I'm
exactly.
in, whenever that comes up, I feel like it's like I've got like two siblings that are fighting. Like I love them both, you know, and I don't want to see them
Yeah.
fight. And it hurts to see them fight. It really does. So that's kind of why I'm always about like, let's we're not going to agree on everything. You do your best, and you know, time will kind of tell, I guess, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, sure, sure.
But I always say like act like your people are depending on you. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, well, they are. They are
Yeah,
really. And,
exactly.
we're trying to do our bit. Um,
No doubt.
we try. We try. We try.
Yeah,
But,
we're working on it.
but yeah, I think we're gaining some traction now with these shows, and
Hmm.
it just I think it helps just doing something, um, you know, uh,
Sure.
even for yourself, knowing that you're trying to do something. You're trying to build community. You're trying to.
Right. I also feel
Um,
that a lot of what we do, it's archived. You know what I mean? That it, even though maybe we might not have a lot of people watching the show now, there's going to come a time when that's going to matter, and people are going to say, you know, what is white culture? What is white art? What is, you know, what resources do we have to draw from on this topic? And
mm.
then we'll already have dozens of shows, you know, by
Yeah,
that
yeah,
time,
true.
that, you know, oh, check out this resource, check out that resource. When I was doing the Imperium art series, that's a bunch of it's essentially a documentary where I interview artists and influencers in our sphere, and you know, we specifically talk about what would be a vision for the arts, for our movement and our people moving forward. You know, how could we, you know, what should artists that are conscious, racially conscious, be doing? You know, what should we be saying? What matters? How do we function? Because culture obviously is important, right? You know, so you get the general idea
Hmm.
pointing out here.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so there's many times where something like that would come up online at any, you know, Twitter here or there somewhere. And then I would shoot off a link to the place, the playlist. And so, you know, because there's just so many people that are like so negative, and they're like, oh, right wing doesn't have any culture. Right, there's no such thing as right wing art or white people this, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, well, yeah, you know. And then I like shoot a cannonball right in their gut, you know, like check this out, you know, boom, and knock them down, you
Yeah,
know. So it's important that we have this material, you know.
yeah. I'm sure the people that are tuning in now, um, I'd like to think that they get something from it as well. Um,
Sure, sure.
if not to just hang out, to know that they've
Oh,
got that there's
totally,
people there
hugely, yeah.
to understand what they're
Yeah.
kind of thinking, feeling, and
Right, right, right. Well, for me, I this is like, you know, 1:30. It starts at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in the East Coast, and most people are at their jobs, you know. So I don't expect people to be able to tune in at this time. They can obviously,
mm,
you know, check out the playback or what have you. But my nightly streams, they're not nightly, but I almost every night I'm doing art streams, live art streams.
yeah,
I get between 150 and 200 views, and
wow,
that's just me hanging out with the buds, you know,
hmm,
drawing comics and talking about, you know, our politics and our culture, our history, all of our stuff.
yeah,
So that, you know, there's people around at that time, you know, that can enjoy the content, you know what I'm saying?
hmm,
So
yeah.
yeah,
It's
there you go.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. Any other final bits of info that we haven't touched upon yet?
Well,
Um,
no, actually, I did cover the list there, so I'm not quite done with this piece, but it's shaping up enough to sort of be like we could probably wrap the show up. That your piece looks gorgeous. It's really nicely painted,
cheers. There's
nice
still
palette.
bits I need to do on it, but
Yeah,
Yeah, I need to do a bit on the armor at the bottom.
Hmm.
I'm very rusty with with portraits. I haven't done portraits in a long time.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I'm basically gonna continue with this another day, I think.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
for
it's been
now,
we've been going about an hour and a half now. Exactly,
yeah,
actually.
exactly an hour and a half.
Why don't we
So yeah.
all right. Well, why don't we wrap it up? I want to thank everyone for joining us. Like, subscribe, comment, and share as usual. Get engaged. Be a proliferator of the arts. Our content really doesn't exist in a void. It depends on you to share and get involved in the culture. So it's not all hot takes and shit lording. you know, like give people inspiration, connect them again to our biospirit, our racial soul, inspire our people. We have a hard battle ahead of us, and the arts are a kind of like spiritual food that we must feast on in order to fight these battles. So thank you so much, Patriot. Again, it's just always such a pleasure. I'm so happy that we're doing this together.
Yeah, I feel the same. I'm really happy to have you co-hosting this show with me,
Hmm.
and obviously going to join in artists and creatives from across the pond in the US to the UK, and yeah. So thanks to anyone who's tuned in today and anyone watching on the repeat videos. Yeah, check out the White Art Collective channels on YouTube, also the Patriotic Arts community. You can visit via the website patrioticarts.community, and there you can link to the Telegram channels and see what contests we've got on at the moment. And yeah, look out for the final artworks in future videos to do a time lapse recap, and yeah, tune in same time next week, 6 p.m. GMT.
And 1 p.m. EST. So God bless you guys. Have a wonderful day, and don't lose the faith. We love you. Bye bye.
Good night.